Oxygen, scientists say, aids the burning of gases, and the Harmattan season is a time when oxygen finds freedom amidst dry and dusty wind. Fire during this season are usually frequent, as we see in bush burning, wildfires, and domestic fire incidents. The consequence most times is both economical and social, reaching unimaginable proportions and leading to loss of life and property. Today on the program, we shall be examining the causative factors of fire outbreaks during this season of the year. We also hope through our discussions to identify some preventive measures to ensure reduction of fire-related cases in Nigeria. This is Nigeria Today, and I am Dennis Adigunloye. Welcome. All right, with me in the studio to discuss fire in the Harmattan season is Ibrahim Goni. He is the Conservator General of the National Park Service. You're welcome to Nigeria Today, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Nigerians.
All right, and we also have with us Engineer Okebiorun Olusegun James. He is the former Controller General of the Federal Fire Service. You're very welcome to Nigeria Today, sir.
It's my pleasure.
All right. So, well, as we all know, we are getting deep into the dry season, and it's more often than not we see a lot of fire outbreaks at this time of the year. Let me come to Ibrahim Goni first. Why is there a high case of fire incidents during this season in particular?
Thank you very much, Mr. Dennis.
Yeah.
There are high incidences of fire cases during the Harmattan because in your introduction, you did mention that fire moves freely, and during the Harmattan, the intensity or speed of fire increases because fire moves between 16 and 20 kilometers per hour.
Okay. So
with the Harmattan wind, the rate of acceleration is higher because the vegetation and all other surfaces are dry. So, and there is nothing putting a brake to the wind. Therefore, whatever combustion that there is will always move faster during the Harmattan period.
All right. Olusegun James, let me bring you here now. Obviously, we're in this season where fires are, there's more risks of fire outbreaks. So just give us your initial thoughts on this topic.
Well, thank you very much. Fire outbreak generally, whether during Harmattan or other seasons, are usually caused by carelessness attitude, careless attitude of the people in general. But when you look at fire during Harmattan, we can classify them into two categories. We have the external ones, that is the one that can be outside the homes. Then you have the one inside the home. For the ones outside the homes, they tend to be more volatile during Harmattan because everything is dry. It's ready to burn. And the whole environment is dirty with leaves. Yeah. So a little fire burning somewhere will be carried by the wind and then transported to another location, and that leads to a very high spread of fire during Harmattan, at least on the external part. And I was talking about our careless attitude. Yeah. During Harmattan or any other time, your environment must be kept clean. The leaves are falling at this time. They are dry. Ensure that they are properly removed. That is very essential. And many homes, they have trees around the homes. Most of these leaves will have fallen on top of their roofs. And so if there is a little transportation of fire from one point to that roof, a serious fire commences. And so those with such trees around their homes should ensure that those trees are cleared of debris all the time. That is for the external side. On the internal side, it's also the same thing. Careless attitude of people.
Okay.
We do what we are not supposed to do. We don't do what we are supposed to do. In the home, we should ensure that there's a good housekeeping. Don't just drop your daily papers everywhere and litter the whole place with papers. Or you stack your papers until it gets to the roofs. Any little fire will just transport it straight to the roof. And once fire gets to the roof, it takes just about 3 to 5 minutes. The whole house is gone. So we have to be very careful of such careless attitudes, especially now that everything is dry.
All right. Okay, so basically there's a call for greater care and conscientiousness in terms of how we go about our daily lives, especially during this period. All right. Ibrahim Goni, let's just talk a little bit about the National Park Service. Is there a policy that provides much flexibility to individual parks in defining appropriate fire behavior, not just in this period, but also, you know, in other times of the year?
Yes, there are appropriate rules, regulations and guidelines in the utilization of fire in the national parks.
Okay.
In ecological management, fire has a regime. We have the late regime and you have the early regime. The early regime starts from immediately after the wet season. That is the early regime.
Okay.
That time when you are burning, you do not expect the burning to be of high intensity because the vegetation then is not fully dry.
Yeah.
The late regime exacerbates fire activities because all the dry matters are abundant. Like my colleague has said, you have a lot of dry litter all over. So the late regime exacerbates the fire activities. Then for us in the national parks, we utilize the two regimes because for the early regime, burning is carried out. We call it, you know, you have a control burning and you have uncontrolled burning, which we call management burning in ecological terms.
Okay.
Then the management burning in ecological terms, you have to carry out preventive measures before you go to set your fire.
Right.
Make sure you have fire trace your properties. That is one.
Okay.
Ensure that there are the point between ignition and the flame are separated. Also ensure that the combustible matter does not give too much fuel. If you have too much fuel load, the intensity will be very high and cannot be controlled. Then you also have to carry out awareness campaign amongst the populace. You are going to embark on fire activities. You are advised to fire trace your property. You are advised to observe this rule. When this happens, don't do this. When this happens, do this. This way, we are able to regulate the intensity of fire, and these are the measures we carry out in national parks.
What I'm getting from what you're saying is that fire in itself is almost like a living being that has its own own mind, if you like.
Exactly.
If you don't combat it,
that is why it is said that fire is a chemical reaction.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Olusegun James, let's talk about this issue of bush burning. It seems to be a common practice and as integral with regards to traditional farming practices. This issue of bush burning, is it really an aspect of farming that is supported or necessary?
Well, bush burning is not really good for agriculture because when you burn the bush, you destroy all the nutrients within the soil. But locally, people think that when you burn the bush, it becomes more fertile. That is not very true. And now, this period that people burn bushes, like we said earlier on, the fire will spread very rapidly. And so it is encouraged that people don't burn bush at all. And they don't try to burn the bush because of rats. Or maybe they want to kill one animal or the other. They shouldn't do that because at the end of the day, the animal might run away and then the fire will continue to spread. It could lead to a very serious disaster. But one important thing we have to do is that in homes, especially those that are close to bushes or that have bushes around the homes, they must clear some few meters away from the homes of the bush, and ensure that there's no direct contact with the building. If there is fire burning at that time, the fire will be suffocated and will not be able to burn anything any further by the time it gets to that point. So we should clear our environment properly and ensure that it is safe from fire. Now, having done that, fire, we said, is likely due to carelessness. But sometimes you look at human beings, we are not perfect. We can commit blunders. We can have errors. And when such errors occur, where are you? It means you must have prepared for an accident. In preparing for an accident, especially in the homes, you must ensure that you take fire precautions that are necessary within the homes. In addition to that, you must install portable extinguisher in homes to ensure that when the fire comes in or starts, you are able to stop it.
Able to react.
Most fires, they start very small. And if you don't have anything to terminate it, it grows rapidly and becomes a very large one that will destroy the environment. And so it is essential that every home should have extinguishers. And offices like this, when I came in here, what I was looking for sprinkler points. There is none. In offices like this, you have sprinkler system. It is an automated system that when there is fire, it will activate itself.
Automatically?
Yes, automatically. And then it will try to extinguish that fire even before the firefighters come. It is very essential. It saves a lot of property. It saves lives. Highly essential. And for your equipment here, highly costly equipment, you need
to have that
automatic extinguishers for them. This time not water, but something like FM200 that can flood that environment and extinguish the fire when it comes up. So all these precautions are very necessary, and we should not be too stingy to spend that little money to protect our environment.
Well, prevention is certainly better than cure, and huge expenses in replacing equipment. We'll come to what experiences you have had with regards to fire outbreaks, but that will be after our break, where we take this topic to the masses on the street. The program is Nigeria Today, and we have been discussing fire in the Harmattan season. We'll now take a break and get some views of members of the public on this topic.
Why there is increase in bush burning is because of the dry season and the Harmattan period that we are now.
There's too much breeze, and you know, people don't care about how they go about burning, maybe burning some dustbin or waste product. So as a result of that, when the breeze comes, it will just push it to the bush, and it will start burning.
During Harmattan season or dry season, there is high wind, high speed of wind, which causes dry grasses and dry trees, which are easily inflammable. So once there is strike of matches or ashes or charcoal somewhere burning, to easily ignite fire. So there is need for people to clear debris of grasses around them or around their houses to prevent bush burning.
There should be a legislation in place, because even in the rural areas that be warning them, they will not hear because of self-inclination. But when there is a law and the law enforcement agencies are enforcing the law, it will reduce certainly, because if there is a law, there's going to be sanction and there's going to be procedure or prosecution. When this is gathered, it will discourage people from doing that.
Some respondents there sharing their views on the fire in the Harmattan season. And back to our guests in the studio, and I'll go to Ibrahim Goni. You heard some of the comments there. From what we've heard, they seem to tally with a lot of things that you said.
Yes.
And they're talking about maybe the indifference attitude on the part of Nigerians with regards to how they dispose of waste and that kind of thing.
Yes.
One of the interviewees talked about legislations. What would you like to see in terms of enforcement with regards to safer practices on the part of Nigerians?
Yes, the issue of legislation is a good one.
Yeah.
The problem with us is not that we do not have the laws. The laws are there.
It's enforcement.
But the problem is enforcement. So in this regard, I think the National Assembly and the State Houses of Assembly can go back, look into their archives and see if there are any of these laws. I'm not conversant with this any fire act. I'm not conversant. So that is why I said the National Assembly and the State House of Assembly can go back, look into the archives. If there are such laws, they should be renewed. New legislation should be passed. An agency should be saddled with that responsibility. We already have the fire service. I wouldn't know to what extent they have the powers to enforce some of this legislation. But if there are no agency to do that, I think an agency should be saddled with that responsibility, like one of the interviewees said, so that at least people will be enlightened. After the enlightenment, there will now be enforcement, so that when you hear and you don't obey, then the laws will catch up with you. Yeah.
Okay, Engineer Olusegun, that's coming from the Federal Fire Service background. What, in your experience, has been the case?
You see, what is important about regulations is enforcement.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the teeth to bite, it becomes very difficult for you. But as far as fire is concerned, a fire code had been legislated. We have what you call the National Fire Safety Code. This was passed before I left office in 2014. And the enforcement must have started by now. And that code gives the guideline of what each person should do as his own responsibility to guard against fire outbreak. And if this is properly enforced, I think it will, to a very large extent, limit the outbreak of fire in the country. You see, you cannot eliminate fire outbreak completely, because it is what we use to develop ourselves. There is no technology if there is no fire, because every item of technology must have passed through fire in one way or the other before it becomes what we see today. And so the way we use that fire is what really matters. So that legislation has set the guideline for everybody, every home, every concern on what not to do and what to do to prevent fire. If this is done, I think to a very large extent, we will have a limitation to outbreak of fire. What
needs to be done in terms of sensitizing the public?
Yeah, they are also also sensitizing the public.
Yeah.
The fire departments, both at the state level and at the federal level, they are sensitizing the public. But you know that is also cost intensive and is subject to the limit of the available resources at their disposal. But to a large extent, they are trying. They are making such publicity to the people. And you see, when you talk of fire prevention, people need enlightenment. The society needs enlightenment. I remember when I was in Lagos, we slated one office for inspection. The office said they didn't plan for it that quarter, that we may have to come the following quarter. Actually, when we do inspection of that nature, we don't charge for it. It's free of charge. We don't charge for it. Except when we recommend that, okay, do this, remove this, put this in place. Those are the things that can give you cost. And that is very, very essential for you to do. It's a corporate responsibility. So I think the public too should cooperate with the fire department on these matters. Even during this Harmattan, wildfire is limited to a large extent in Nigeria, very limited. What we have is house burning. And
that's more prevalent than...
It's more prevalent.
Okay.
When you go to control room of a fire department, I can bet it with you that every day in Abuja here, you can't have less than 4 outbreaks of fire. 4 or 5 outbreaks of fire. But you will not hear because it has not reached you. That is the same thing in Lagos, in Port Harcourt, in Kaduna, in everywhere. It's like that. But people don't know until it concerns them. So there's a lot of outbreak of fire within the housing environment. And if we can comply with what the code says, then to a large extent, we can control the fire. Because the code gives us preventive activities and protection activities. Preventive activities are those things you have to do such that the fire doesn't break out. Protection activities are those things you have to do. If the fire breaks out, how do you attack it? How do you stop it? How do you limit its impact? And so on and so forth.
All right. Ibrahim, obviously this is not a peculiar thing only to Nigeria. We've heard in recent weeks mass fire outbreaks in California, in Australia, and that kind of thing. So it's not something that is peculiar to Nigeria alone. So clearly fire is a phenomenon that is a global issue, especially in dry seasons.
Yes, fire, particularly in the savannah land, is a good servant but a bad master.
Okay.
Depending on how you utilize it, it will serve you well. If you mismanage it, it will not serve you well. The fire incidences in Nigeria, about 70% of most of the fires in Nigeria, particularly in the savannah area and the Niger Delta, are caused by bush fires.
Okay.
And Nigeria recorded the grievous fire incidents between 1982 and 1983, when parts of the northern part, the north central, the Niger Delta, recorded a lot of fire incidences, and millions of property, including human lives, were lost. As I'm talking to you now, in the Niger Delta, particularly in Edo State, fire has ravaged the farms of farmers. Just this week in Kaduna, farmers lost their wheat farm as a result of fire being set onto the bush by either hunters looking for small games or big games, herdsmen looking for fodder for their animals. Arsonists also set fire to clear roads for their movement. Then you also have fire that occurs naturally, maybe from lightning, excessive heat, and spontaneous sparks. So these are some of the things that gives room to fire incidents and resulting in at least massive loss of agricultural products.
Okay, let me give you, Olusegun, the final word, just in less than 20 seconds, I say. What is your plea for, emphasis again to Nigerians in terms of their own personal conduct to minimize this issue of fire outbreak? Briefly, please.
Okay, my suggestion to every Nigerian is to ensure that they are very careful in handling issues relating to fire, and then they must prevent it as much as possible. Every organization should ensure that their environment are equally protected. And in fact, the greatest culprits are corporate organizations. When you get to their buildings, a 12-story building, the rising means will not be there. It will not be working. The sprinkler systems are not working, if at all they are there. The extinguishers are not serviced. If you don't service your extinguisher when you need it, it is useless. You have to service your extinguishers very regularly so that when you need it, it's portable. So we have to ensure that all those things that are necessary are put in place, and then we take precaution in the homes. Let me give one advice again. Every home must ensure that they know how to escape if there is fire in their environment, in their department, in their flats.
All right. Thank you both very much. That is it on this edition of Nigeria Today. But before we go, we want to appreciate our guests, Ibrahim Goni, the Conservator General, National Park Service, and Engineer Okebiorun Olusegun James. He is the former Comptroller General of the Federal Fire Service. We thank you both for your contributions and your thoughts on this topic.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. And we thank you to our viewers for your time. And remember, you can watch this edition or any other online at www.youtube.com/News24Hub. My name is Dennis Adigunloye. Enjoy the rest of your day.